This is the brief on AI Decoded. Think of this weekly show as your very own universal translator, taking all that intimidating tech speak and turning it into practical, everyday language for folks without a technical background. First, we need to look at who this is actually for, because their core mission is to make artificial intelligence finally click for non-technical users. Since we aren't all programmers, the show acts as a strict filter for information, which really makes you wonder, if AI systems are so profoundly complex, how accessible can they genuinely be for an absolute beginner? Well, second, we see how the two hosts answer that by aggressively filtering the noise, separating what's actually useful.
Here is a terrifying reality about learning, right? Rereading your notes actually makes you feel smarter in the moment, while simultaneously guaranteeing you will forget literally all the material by tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a documented psychological phenomenon. We call it the illusion of competence.
And if you are sitting at your desk at midnight, bathed in the glow of your laptop, and you're staring at the exact same textbook paragraph for the third time.
Oh, and feeling the words just slide right off your brain.
Exactly. You are experiencing that illusion collapsing in real time.
It is a universally relatable and honestly deeply frustrating feeling. I mean, you dutifully wrote the notes down in lecture.
Right.
Technically, the information is physically right there in front of you.
Yeah.
But the actual click where it makes sense is completely missing.
Yeah, it's just a void.
Historically, that gap between having access to information and actually comprehending it is this void where so much human potential just quietly evaporates.
Because what do you actually do at midnight? You can't raise your hand.
Exactly.
So in today's deep dive, we're exploring a really fascinating set of notes titled Claude for College Students. And our mission here is to look at how you can use artificial intelligence, specifically Claude, not to cheat.
Right, not to cut corners.
Yeah, but to fundamentally bridge that frustrating gap.
Because the traditional education system has a severe structural bottleneck when it comes to personalized understanding.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the resources you normally have to fix a misunderstanding. Office hours happen maybe once a week for 30 minutes.
Assuming you don't have another class right at that exact time.
Right. And study groups only function if someone else in the room actually grasps the material enough to teach it to you.
Which is rare. Okay, let's unpack this. Traditional learning is basically like being handed all the raw ingredients for an incredibly complex Michelin star recipe.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, so you have the flour, the eggs, the intricate spices, that's your textbook, and your lecture notes. But the master chef, your professor, is only available to show you how to actually combine them for 30 minutes on Tuesdays.
Which is wildly inefficient.
Right. If your sauce breaks on Thursday night, you are entirely on your own.
Well, what Claude does is completely rewrite the economics of this understanding gap. We finally have a resource that is patient, articulate, and critically, it's an unembarrassed sounding board available at any hour.
The unembarrassed part is so key.
It really is. The fear of looking dumb in a lecture hall of 300 people keeps countless questions from ever being asked out loud.
And if you're listening to this and thinking, I don't have time to argue with a chatbot about protein gradients when my exam is in 8 hours.
You're probably stressed out of your mind.
Exactly. Yeah. But the reality is that the 15 minutes you spend refining a prompt saves you 3 hours of staring blankly at a textbook.
Yeah. Having access to Claude doesn't automatically make you a genius, though. It entirely relies on how you ask for help.
That is the crucial pivot.
The fundamental shift we need to talk about is moving from generic asking to hyper-specific prompting. If you go to the AI and simply type explain photosynthesis, you are wasting your time.
Yeah, a generic prompt generates a generic textbook answer.
Which puts you right back where you started, just staring at words that do not connect.
Because if you know the topic is photosynthesis, you already have the textbook definition.
Precisely.
The source notes have this brilliant example about a biology student navigating cognitive overload. Instead of asking for a summary of the whole topic, the ideal prompt isolates the exact breakdown.
Right, you have to pinpoint the confusion.
So you would say something like, my biology professor explained light-dependent reactions today. I understood that they happen in the thylakoid membrane, and I know chlorophyll is involved.
Setting the baseline.
Yeah, but I completely lost the thread when she started talking about the electron transport chain and what it has to do with producing ATP. Can you connect those specific things in a sequence?
What's fascinating here is how that changes the cognitive interaction. That level of specificity allows the AI to start from the exact coordinate where your understanding ends.
Because it knows exactly what you already get.
Right. Mechanically, the human brain learns by attaching new information to existing knowledge structures. When you give the AI your exact baseline, it builds the bridge from a solid foundation you already possess.
Rather than forcing you to wade through 3 paragraphs of introductory material your brain is already fatigued by.
Exactly, it skips the fluff.
I want to push back on this, though. Let's say you give it that incredibly specific prompt, and Claude spits out a perfectly tailored answer about the electron transport chain.
Okay.
And you read it, and it still doesn't click for you. Like the bridge is still wobbly. Doesn't the whole system just break down at that point?
Well, a textbook just sits there when you don't understand it. A recorded lecture plays the exact same confusing sentence over again.
Yeah, that's true.
But with this tool, you enter an iterative loop. You just type, I still don't get the part about the protein gradient. Or, that explanation was too dense, try again.
Oh, wow. So you can just ask for another explanation and another one.
As many as you need. Even on the 4th try, the AI never sighs, it never checks its watch.
It never gives you that judgmental look that says, hey, we went over this.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this iterative process explanation, follow-up, adjusted explanation, new follow-up is exactly the mechanism of excellent one-on-one tutoring.
The kind that normally costs a fortune.
Right. Cognitive science shows that we construct genuine understanding by pushing boundaries, testing limits, and adjusting our mental models in real time.
Sometimes the issue isn't just missing a step in a sequence, though. Like, sometimes a concept feels completely alien.
Oh, totally.
The notes point out that when a concept feels impossible to grasp, it usually isn't because you lack the intellectual horsepower to understand it.
Yeah, it is simply that the new concept lacks a bridge to your existing mental models. It's just floating out in the void without an anchor.
Right.
To actually retain information, your brain needs to physically wire new synaptic connections to establish neural pathways.
This is where you can use the AI as a custom translator.
I love this part.
Let's say you're an economics student struggling with really complex market dynamics, like supply and demand shocks. But you have a massive encyclopedic knowledge of sports.
Okay, yeah.
You understand team salary caps, draft trades, momentum shifts on the field. You can literally prompt the AI to explain economic market dynamics using sports analogies.
Or take the engineering example from the text.
Oh, the circuit one.
Yeah, an electrical engineering student trying to understand abstract circuit concepts like voltage, current, and resistance. These forces are invisible, making them inherently difficult to conceptualize.
Because you can't see electricity.
Right. But if that student grew up working on cars, they already have a deep, intuitive understanding of fluid pressure, flow rates, and mechanical resistance.
That makes so much sense.
So you explicitly ask Claude to build a bridge between the familiar car engine and the unfamiliar electrical circuit.
You just hijack the neural pathways you've already built. It's like trying to cross a rushing river instead of swimming against the current of a totally new concept. You're just walking across a structural bridge you constructed years ago.
And explanations built this way stick infinitely better because they leverage cognitive mapping. You're providing the brain with a structural shortcut.
Drastically reducing the cognitive load required to process the new information.
Precisely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Once you have used those analogies to build the understanding, you can completely flip the script.
Right. Claude stops being your patient tutor and becomes your examiner.
Let's look at the active recall loop. Because going back to the illusion of competence from the beginning of our deep dive, just reading that brilliant new analogy over and over still won't save you on test day.
No, it won't. Active recall is the uncomfortable process of forcing yourself to retrieve information from memory without looking at your notes.
It's so painful sometimes.
It is. But the struggle of retrieval, and then verifying if you were right, is what physically cements the memory in your hippocampus. Passive rereading, which is what the vast majority of students default to, just highlighting notes over and over, is largely an illusion of learning.
It's like trying to build muscle by watching a video of someone else lifting weights and expecting your biceps to grow.
That is a great way to put it.
You have to lift the weight yourself. And according to the source material, you can use Claude to generate a completely custom active recall workout. You don't just ask for a generic quiz.
No, you dictate the exact format.
You tell it, hey, give me multiple choice questions, then 2 case studies, and a short answer prompt on this specific biology chapter.
Yeah, you could also specify the difficulty curve. You ask the AI to start with foundational concepts, and then structurally escalate the difficulty as you get answers right.
And if you get an answer wrong, you don't just get a red X. You ask the AI to explain why the answer is wrong.
Yes, it's a continuous active feedback loop.
You can steer the study session to exactly where you're weakest, saying something like, I kept messing up the questions on the ATP cycle. Focus the next batch only on that.
But here is the trap with active recall.
Uh-oh, what's the trap?
Well, you can perfectly memorize what A is and what B is using those tailored flashcards. High-level university exams, however, rarely care if you know the isolated definitions.
Oh, right. They test if you understand what happens when A collides with B.
Exactly. So we have to move from memorization to synthesis.
That's the real test.
Genuine mastery. You say, create practice questions that force me to connect the material from Unit 1 with the material from Unit 4.
That trains your brain to look for structural relationships between ideas.
Which is the absolute essence of high-level academic testing.
So what does this all mean for the other side of the college experience? We've talked about studying and exams, but let's pivot to the most anxiety-inducing part of the entire academic journey.
Staring at the blinking cursor on a blank document.
Yes, academic writing.
The gap between how clearly a student thinks they understand a topic and how clearly they can actually argue it on paper is, well, it's deeply uncomfortable to confront.
Because when you write, you cannot hide behind a vague sense of familiarity.
No, you are forced to linearize your thoughts and defend them.
And because of that discomfort, the temptation to use AI as a shortcut to just write a 10-page paper on the French Revolution is massive.
It really is. But if you do that, you bypass the exact analytical skills the degree is supposed to represent.
Right. So if I can't use it to write the essay, wait, it's almost like hiring an architect to look at my blueprints and give me structural advice, but I still have to swing the hammer to build the house.
That is the perfect distinction. The source notes divide this into two highly productive stages that maintain academic integrity.
Okay, what are they?
The outline stage and the revision stage. In the outline stage, you don't ask it for ideas. You bring your topic, your assignment requirements, and your preliminary messy thoughts about the argument you want to make.
You say, here is my thesis, here are my 3 main points, help me organize this.
Yes, Claude helps you build the scaffolding, bypassing the executive dysfunction that often causes writer's block.
It's so hard to just start.
It is. So it might suggest that your introduction needs to better establish the stakes of the argument, or that your body paragraphs should follow a specific logical sequence.
And that your conclusion needs to synthesize the points rather than just, repeating the intro.
Exactly. The structure gives you a map, so you aren't staring at a blank page, but you still have to execute the actual drafting.
And once you have that terrible, messy first draft, because first drafts are literally always messy, you enter the revision stage.
Yes. This is where you bring your draft back to Claude, not to rewrite it, but for targeted feedback.
So you ask specific questions like, is my argument logically consistent here? Are there places where my reasoning is weak? Did I go off topic in paragraph 4?
Getting FaceTime with a professor for 3 different draft revisions is virtually impossible.
Yeah, they'd laugh you out of their office.
Pretty much. But with this workflow, you have a tireless revision partner. That willingness to revise based on critical feedback is arguably the single most important habit a student can develop.
For college and for their professional career.
Definitely.
I have to be brutally honest here, though. I've tried using AI for research before, and tracing back fake citations wasted hours of my time.
Ah, the hallucinations.
Yeah. It gave me perfectly formatted APA citations for journal articles that simply did not exist. Isn't it safer to just ban AI from the research phase entirely rather than risking that?
This raises an important question about the technical limitations of large language models. You have to understand why the tool hallucinates in the first place.
Okay, why does it?
Claude does not know facts in a database sense. It predicts the next most logical word based on statistical probabilities in its training data.
Oh, I see.
So if you ask for a citation, it predicts what a URL or a JSTOR link looks like, assembling a completely fake paper out of thin air because the string of words looks statistically correct.
That is terrifying if you were trying to build a bibliography. It doesn't know what happened yesterday, it can't browse the live internet, and it will confidently lie to you because it's basically just playing the ultimate game of predictive text.
Exactly.
So what is the actual workflow here?
The notes are very clear on the proper workflow to avoid this. You use Claude for intellectual orientation, not as a source repository.
Intellectual orientation.
Right. When you enter a new field, use the AI to understand the landscape. Ask it, what are the main debates in this area of study? What are the key perspectives?
Oh, or like, what specific search terms should I use to find the best literature?
Exactly. You use it as the intellectual guide to draw the map.
And then what?
Then you take that map and you go to Google Scholar, to JSTOR, to your university library databases. Those are your actual source repositories. You find the real verified papers there.
Ah, okay. And if you find a dense 30-page paper on JSTOR and you don't fully understand the methodology, you can bring that specific text back to Claude and ask it to explain the methodology to you.
Yes. You are bouncing between the tools, using each for what it is actually designed to do.
It requires discipline, but it is an incredibly powerful workflow.
Because it insulates you from the hallucination problem while still leveraging the AI's ability to simplify complex academic jargon.
Taking a step back from all the specific tactics, the active recall, the neural mapping of analogies, the essay scaffolding, I am really struck by the broader picture here.
It's like,
Well, by constantly practicing this, by pinpointing your exact confusion, asking for analogies, testing your synthesis, navigating structural feedback, I mean, you aren't just surviving college, you are building a highly active relationship with your own brain.
that is spot on. You are developing metacognition.
Metacognition.
Yeah, it's the ability to think about your own thinking, knowing the precise boundary of what you know and exactly what you don't know.
Students who develop this habit, who can identify the edge of their own understanding, rather than just coasting on a vague sense of familiarity, they're doing something profound.
They really are.
That habit of precision transfers directly to the professional world. Think about it. In a meeting or on a complex project, the person who can say, I understand components A and B, but I need clarification on how C integrates with our timeline.
Oh, they are infinitely more valuable than the person who just nods along and hopes they figure it out later.
Exactly. It is a massive competitive advantage. You learn to address your blind spots directly and aggressively
Yeah.
rather than awkwardly working around them.
You stop being a passive recipient of information and become an active architect of your own knowledge.
It means that AI isn't just an answer machine. When used correctly, it is a mirror.
A mirror. I like that.
It reflects back exactly how actively you are engaging with your own mind. It rewards precision, it rewards curiosity, and it punishes laziness.
It really does hold you accountable if you use it right.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the midnight struggles of the illusion of competence to the cognitive mechanics of metacognition.
I want to leave you with one final unexamined thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If we're entering an era where AI can perfectly simulate a patient, world-class tutor, a tutor that helps us precisely map the boundaries of our understanding, will the future of education fundamentally change? Will we see a shift entirely away from testing our ability to learn facts and instead focus exclusively on evaluating our ability to ask better, more precise questions?
Next time you are staring at that textbook paragraph at midnight, maybe that is the real question you should be asking. Catch you next time.
This is The Brief on the AI Decoded podcast. AI Decoded is a weekly show that provides actionable tech advice, and today we are looking at their broadcasting footprint and upcoming programming. You know, keeping up with AI tools feels kind of like navigating this dense, totally unpredictable jungle, which is exactly why finding a reliable guide is absolutely crucial. First, where do you find that guide? Well, listeners can expect a new episode every single week, accessible across all major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.